Yo, what's going on everybody? Welcome back to Trying to Talk NYC. Hope you guys are having an amazing day. And today we're going to be talking about accessibility of the New York City subway. Just recently, the MTA posted a video on their YouTube channel talking about how they're improving accessibility with having fully accessible buses, making more subway stations in the system fully accessible, and as well showing off their brand new R211 subway cars that are going to be even more accessible with their brand new flip-up seats for passengers. But today we're going to be talking about the New York City subway itself, filled with over 400 subway stations. How many of them are accessible? Now, the entire New York City system, including the Long Island Railroad, Metro North, and everything, is 41% accessible. 41% all systems. And of course, that can be improved upon. Also, the Long Island Railroad has a higher percentage of accessible subway stations. Now, of course, it doesn't have the same amount of subway stations. It has about 100, but a higher percent of it is accessible. Now, it's very important that a subway system like New York City has a lot of accessible subway stations, but because it needs to be open to all customers, no matter what they are. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. My personal thoughts on which subway stations should be accessible. Now, there is a list of stations that is soon to be fully accessible, but they're not accessible right now. This map has every station that is accessible right now on the day of this recording, which is August 6th. And looking at the map, there is a fair amount of accessible stations, and you notice that they are kind of spread out. There isn't exactly one area. The only area that you would kind of notice is right here in the middle of Manhattan, which kind of makes sense because that's where most of the people are heading towards. All the lines go straight over here. But if you look at the Bronx, once again spread out, look at here, the next accessible station all the way over here, 4 line, next accessible station over here. B and D line have 2 over here, but none all over here. And keep in mind that these stations are fully accessible. There are some stations that have a little elevator, escalator, but that doesn't mean that they're fully accessible. They might have an elevator that just takes you to the mezzanine. After you go to the mezzanine and then pay, you're gonna have to take a little couple of stairs to go to the platform. Not every station is fully 100% accessible, meaning you can always take the elevator, because there is 2 elevators, one that takes you from the street to the mezz, and then from the mezz to the platform. There's 2 sets of escalators and or elevators. Now, personally, one thing that I wish for them to do immediately is do every station that just isn't not fully accessible. There are some stations where only one side is fully accessible. If you look over here, Wilson Avenue on the L line, only the northbound side is fully accessible. So if you're in a wheelchair, you're hopping on that northbound side, or you're gonna have to take stairs to the southbound side, which is never fun to deal with. And then that means, guess what, you're gonna probably have to go to Myrtle Wyckoff, but you're gonna have to go to the nearest station that either has 1 platform or is also fully accessible, and then turn around, which is always just unpleasant. And honestly, every station that has only 1 side accessible should instantly get fully accessible. And if you head on over here, Byrtle Hall on the 405 platform, that was like that for a long time. They are planning to do that, but it just kind of sucks that you just put those elevators there on the northbound side of the 4 and 5 platform. The 2 and 3 platform is fully accessible, and it just sucks that you just did that uptown side and then just left the southbound side hanging. And also that R train is not fully accessible. And that's another thing, stations where multiple lines stop at. All of the platforms might not be fully accessible because all those trains are on different platforms. If you head on over to 14th Street Union Square, it's right over here, you can see that only the L, N, Q, R, and W is fully accessible. And if you pull up to Grand Central and Times Square, both of these stops are fully accessible except the shuttle platform. Now, they are giving the shuttle platform a big boost. They are renovating that over there, and they are gonna make it fully accessible in the future. They're working on that right now, but that just kind of sucks. And there's a bunch in Manhattan that is only 1 side fully accessible. I mean, you got 28th Street right there, 50th Street on the C and E over there, only the southbound side. 49th Street, only the northbound side. 86th Street, only the northbound 6, which means you're not going to be able to get that express. And overall, that's just kind of silly. Just make it fully accessible and not just having 1 side. Now, every new train station has gotten accessibility right off the bat. If you look at 72nd Street, 86, 96, as well as 34th Street Hudson Yards, those are the 4 newest train stations that have been put into the system, and they are fully accessible right off the bat, which is awesome. And also all those new Q chain stops that's heading over here, they should be fully accessible as well. And the planned T train should have every stop accessible as well. But in my opinion, I do think every terminal should be accessible, and that's because that's where most of the people are going to be boarding on the train. That's where the train sits, and that's where people board, and that's where most people sort of like get off or something, the terminal. So you know what I'm saying? So I think every terminal should at least be accessible. I think Bay Ridge 95th Street is getting it as well as most choke points where like a lot of people transfer. I don't know if choke point is the correct terminology for that. Here, like New Utrecht, I know it's fully accessible, but that's an example where like there's only like 2 lines, there's no other lines nearby, and those are the only lines that are like connecting there. Another example would be Union Street and Livonia. Now Livonia Avenue has elevators in construction. I'm gonna play a clip of that right now. Yeah, Livonia has elevators in construction, and they are giving it a transfer to Junius, but I don't know how that's gonna work. But they're definitely gonna give Livonia Avenue that fully accessible treatment. If you look at the J line, there is just a huge gap from Flushing, and then just there's literally no train stations here that's fully accessible. Now Broadway Junction has its set of elevators to take you from escalators, to take you from the underground AC to the elevated J, Z, and L, but it's not fully accessible. Even though there's a pair of escalators, it's not fully accessible. And the J line just has a huge gap here. I definitely think they should look at the data for the station, see which station in this area is the most used besides Broadway Junction, and give that a pair of elevators first. And then we do have both terminals over here. I do think Broad Channel should get it as well. I think Beach 90th or Beach 105th, something over here is getting it. But I think they should do it at Broad Channel as well next, in my opinion. And also another thing would be every express stop at least. There is still a lot of gaps here in Brooklyn. If you look on the F line J Street, the next accessible station is Church. You should put it at 7th Avenue because that's where the express goes. And then maybe one at 459th Street, maybe Carroll as well. At least every other stop would be a nice accomplishment or a nice goal for the MTA. But of course, I think one thing they should do like immediately is do every terminal, knock out all the stops that have only one platform, and then of course some other stops that have one like elevator but is not fully accessible. I do think they should just take care of that as well. Now I know there is a video on the MTA YouTube channel talking about how, you know, it's actually very difficult, which I understand, but of course that's just my opinion. I think they should do some of that. Right, and I'm gonna have a list of future accessible stations. I'm gonna share it with you guys real quick. First thing on the list, we got 170th Street on the 4 line. Let me go over there. Great accessible station. I honestly think they should do it at Burnside because that's like the next express, and also a lot of trains terminate there. So I think they should do that. I know 167 is right next to Yankee, so like it makes more sense to spread it out. But you know, that's fine. It doesn't really matter. We got Livonia Avenue on the L. I just talked about that. Times Square on the shuttle train because all the other trains are fully accessible. Next we got Tremont Avenue on the BD, great place for fully accessible. D goes straight there from 145th Street, but Tremont definitely good accessible stop. Next up, one jump over here, 149th Street Grand Concourse. This is one of those choke points that I was talking about earlier, where like a lot of people transfer. Once again, I don't know if that's the correct terminology. 7th Avenue on the F and G line, just was talking about that, how they should do that. Next, Beach 67th Street. I mean, I still want them to do Broad Channel, but I guess that's just fine. Dykeman on the 1, I think that station was shut down or something, so they can build elevators. I don't know, something with the 1 train with a lot of stations being shut down for elevator replacement. East 149th on the 6th. Let me go up there real quick. East 149. Not bad. Oh yeah, and the 6 is not good as well. Not even Parkchester. There's only 2 on the Pelham line. That is not very great, I'm going to be honest. You know what I'm saying? Do Parkchester, and then at least one of the local stops. Probably Elder or something. And you're doing the East 149. And I think they should do 3rd Ave 148 as well, in my opinion. Next, you got New Dorp on the Staten Island Railway. You got New Dorp right there. I think they should do another over here, probably at Princess Bay. 8th Avenue, isn't that only like one side or something? Yeah, it is. Definitely make that fully accessible ASAP. Also, they should do like Kings Highway right there. That's where the B82 goes at. I think they should do that. I also think they should do Kings Highway on the F as well. I think they should do all the Kings Highways. And once again, big gap on the Culver line. Nothing south of Church Avenue is accessible besides Coney Island. I mean, they do have a long list of future fully accessible stations, which is not bad. I do like it. Just that I wish they would do some stations first, then other stations. Alright, and to finish off the list, Notion Avenue, New Lots Avenue on the 3, Myrtle Avenue, JM&Z, definitely that, because that's where the M splits away. New Lots Avenue 3 right there. I didn't show it, but this is getting elevators. Sheepshead Bay, and of course Avenue H got those like new ramps. Jefferson Street on the L, once again filling up this big gap that the L has for accessible stations. Glad that they're doing that. Briarwood on the E and F trains, which is great because that's where they both split up. And of course, that's where a lot of people are going to be transferring out. And the 7 line, I forgot about this area of Queens, but the 7 line, a lot of people are upset that the stations are deteriorating. Definitely need to renovate those. They should do Metz Willets Point, because I think that's where the yard is. Or is that 111? I don't know. But that's where a lot of 7 trains terminate here, and that's where the Express goes. They're already doing good with the Express, Junction, 61st Street Woodside, and Queensboro Plaza is not accessible. But you know, good Express stops that are accessible. But they are doing it at 33rd and 46, which is great. I think they should do another one up here, Metz Willets Point, and maybe one of these local ones, preferably 111th Street. Oh, and they are doing one at Vernon Boulevard. I scrolled past that. 42nd Street Bryant Park, that's getting it as well. Good transfer point. Brook Avenue, just talking about how they should do one of the local stations. Wakefield, 241st Street, once again, terminal. They have to do all terminals, in my opinion. I think they should do all terminals. 14th Street on 6th Avenue. And Grand Street on the L. Scrolled past that, but once again, good to fill up this big gap. Grand Street and Jefferson Street. And there you go. That's all the accessible stations that I'm going to talk about. There's a long list that you guys can look up on the MTA website of future accessible stations. But I was just going through some honorable mentions and stuff that I really like. But that has been my talk on the accessibility of the New York City subway. They are doing a good job. They're rolling out new accessible stations like every couple of months. And hopefully this will make a much better system for the Americans with disabilities. But for now, this has been Transit Talk. Thank you all for hanging out right here on Tuesdays, Transit Tuesdays. And I'll see you guys in the next one. See you guys next time.